Click leads to the African perspective. Visit us on our website www.channelafrica.co.za or follow us on Instagram or on X at Channel Africa 1. Go on, like us on Facebook at Channel Africa 1. So, spread the word. Tell a friend that Channel Africa's online variety is what they need on the web. Channel Africa, the African perspective. In this episode of Channel Africa Conversations, Peter talks to Dr. Thulisile Buddha, an academic, author, and an expert in indigenous knowledge systems. Join us for a compelling discussion on preserving African languages and traditions in the digital era. Dr. Thulisile unpacks the role of educators, explorers, and how technologies like AI can support cultural preservation, and challenges us to rethink how we honor African heritage. You can find the episode on YouTube, SABC Plus, and on our website, channelafrica.co.za. This episode is a must-listen for educators, creators, and change makers across the continent. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Tsepiso Makwetla winds it down on Africa World Hour, 9 to 10 p.m.
And it is 2100 hours on this Friday evening as we bring you the Friday edition of Africa World Hour, wrapping up the week, wrapping up the day's top stories from the heart of Africa to all corners of the globe. One planet, countless stories. We bring you up to speed in what's been happening in the world of business, in the world of economics, politics, and of course arts and culture, all coming up on this Friday edition. I am Tsepiso Makwetla. Thanks for joining us. Here's a look at our top stories this hour.
Africa World Hour. Africa World Hour. Unpacking global headlines from an African perspective.
In South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa says he hopes progress between the U.S. and his country will improve. Speaking to SABC News, Ramaphosa noted improved communication channels, he said, especially since trade talks have begun to address recent U.S. tariffs. Although U.S. President Donald Trump said that he will not attend the Johannesburg G20 summit in November, Ramaphosa says he has invited him to accept the G20 presidency over in person. Meanwhile, the president adds that he will engage with various countries and enterprises to expand key markets.
The fact that formal negotiations have now started, and it's no longer, tweets and social media messages. It's now formal negotiations. People are in the White House talking about important issues of trade and all that. That for us is a great advance. It's a great progress forward, and we are hoping that those discussions will be well concluded.
And of course, we will be dealing with the issue of US SA trade relations and in general, in terms of diplomacy in a little while. In other news, South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi has told the Madlanga Commission in Pretoria that he felt that he had a responsibility to the people of South Africa to bring to the fore political interference and corruption within the law enforcement agencies. The Madlanga Commission follows allegations by Mkhwanazi at a press briefing in July that criminal syndicates had infiltrated law enforcement agencies. Mkhwanazi has also alleged that they is political interference in these institutions. He says he has encountered challenges since 2011 when he was acting National Police Commissioner.
Is that I highlighted in the media on the 6th of July, it was a history repeating itself to my assessment. And I said, it cannot be that I allowed the Mdlula era, the Minister era, and under President Zuma to happen like that it's happening again now. And I keep quiet. I have a responsibility to bring this to the attention of the executive authority and to Parliament. And in failing that, I was left with no choice to tell the people that employed me, which are the citizens of South Africa.
A small crowd of protesters gathered outside the union buildings in South Africa's capital, Pretoria. The crowd includes organizations from Eswatini, the Swaziland Youth Congress, and the People's United Democratic Movement, Pudemo. The group has made their way to the U.S. Embassy in Pretoria in protest against reports of a $500 million deal between King Mswati III and the United States to house convicted U.S. criminals in Eswatini. The group say their country is being treated like a dumping site and the deal violates the country's sovereignty. Channel Africa's Nhlanhla Mahlangu is there and caught up with Phumlani Nxumalo, the Deputy President of the Swaziland Youth Congress.
A number of more than 150 are still yet to come. So we are trying to raise to the African about imperialism, which is now using Eswatini to attack the southern part of Africa. So the reason we came here is to voice our grievances because we understand the implications that comes with this deal. So ours is to try to raise awareness, pull the southern African people and to the embassy that we are actually not part of this and we are all aggrieved just that it's a deal between the Eswatini government and the US.
And local activists and residents say the drone strike on a mosque in Sudan's Darfur region has now killed at least 75 people. The previous figure stood at 40. The attack in El Fasher city is being blamed on the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. The BBC's Barbara Platt-Asher reports.
Residents said the drone struck the mosque during dawn prayers. Video posted online shows some bodies lying amidst the rubble of a destroyed building, others on the ground covered with blankets. The BBC is working to verify the footage. A statement by activists from an emergency response group said local leaders were among the dead, including the head of administration for the Abu Shuk camp for displaced people. Reports say Abu Shuk came under fierce attack during an RSF advance this week. The paramilitaries have also entered the main base of armed groups that are allied to the Sudanese military. It's considered to be a critical line of defense.
And the head of Britain's Secret Service, MI6 says Russia's President Vladimir Putin has no interest in a negotiated peace short of Ukrainian capitulation. Richard Moore also said that Putin had underestimated the Ukrainian war effort. The BBC's Frank Gardner reports.
He says that there's no evidence that President Putin has any interest in a negotiated peace short of Ukrainian capitulation. He is stringing us along. He's said that bluntly he's bitten off more than he can chew. He thought he was going to get an easy victory, but he lies to the world, to his people, and maybe even to himself.
Tsepiso Makwetla winds it down on Africa World Hour, 9 to 10 p.m.
And the justice ministers of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger, which are members of the Alliance of Sahel States, also known as the AOSS, have met this week to discuss an historic and controversial decision, coordinated withdrawal from the International Criminal Court. The three countries have announced plans to replace the ICC's jurisdiction with what they are calling a Sahelian Criminal Court. This move, they argue, would allow them to safeguard their sovereignty and ensure justice is handled within the region and from what they describe as external interference. The International Criminal Court based in The Hague was established to prosecute war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide when national jurisdictions are unwilling or unable to do so. But critics, specifically in parts of Africa, have long accused the ICC of bias, arguing that it disproportionately targets leaders and cases from the continent. To speak more about this decision, we're joined now by Issa Sanusi, Director at Amnesty International. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you so much for having me this evening.
So let's just first start with understanding what the International Criminal Court is about and look back at the cases, particularly against the accusations leveled against it by the three Sahelian members, saying, and it's not just them, it has also this accusation come from other countries on the continent, that of bias and focusing too much on African cases. Your thoughts on that?
Well, it is very difficult to agree with that argument because we know that this court recently has taken an action against Israel and the Prime Minister of Israel and the former defense minister. So it has also taken action on what happened in Bosnia and Herzegovina and Serbia. It has also taken an action on what happened in Mali and other places. Therefore, the court may have its own shortcomings, but despite all that, it is still the best mechanism we have to ensure that there is global justice and atrocities and human rights violations are duly accounted for across the world. And it is very important to ensure justice, and it is very important to make sure that no one escapes from facing justice for atrocities against people. These countries that are actually making this move are countries that are now running military governments. And we know what happens when you have military rule, where the constitution is suspended and people are ruled with decrees. And decrees are just rules set out by maximum military rulers without regard to people's representation or their input or their abuse. Therefore, this move they are making will even make things worse in these countries, because these are countries suffering from perennial and endemic poverty and conflicts. And I don't think that this move they are making is going to help them. It will rather complicate the situation in this region and make it very difficult to resolve the many conflicts, the jihadists, and other crises these countries are facing now.
Now let's look at what the AOSS governments are saying, that they are going to pretty much mete out their own form of justice. Now, the ICC would have been seen in the past as filling the gap of impunity where it exists according to those international accords that have been signed and countries have agreed to observe. How can the AOSS do this in meting out what they would see, of course, as a national justice, given the fact that they have been seen as compromised due to insecurity? There is a lack of resources in their own countries to ensure that justice for victims is achieved. Are these the challenges that you foresee them facing yourselves, and how can they alleviate or ameliorate some of these challenges?
Well, the best way for them to ameliorate these challenges is for them to know that military rule is outdated, it is draconian, it's repressive, it has never brought progress to any part of the world. Military rule in these countries have gone to series and many times of military coups and again. And that is one of the reasons we believe these countries remain poor, remain in conflict, and remain incapable of making any progress in terms of addressing poverty, infrastructural deficit, and many other problems. Therefore, this court they are talking about, I don't think it would make sense for a military ruler to say that we are going to set up a court to try, international or inter country justice. But the issue is, how are they going to do that? There is no any clear indication that they even understand what they are talking about. Therefore, this move is actually a setback for Africa in the sense that it will make things very difficult. And lack of justice is one of the reasons why these conflicts have not been resolved. That is why many other conflicts continue to happen in Congo and other places. And that is why Africa is still in conflict. And we believe that the only way these countries can ensure justice is for them to allow themselves to be held to account by international standard. You can't try yourself in your own court. And what they are doing now is trying to set up their own court where they will be the judge and they will be the jury, which doesn't make sense at all.
So, on the one hand, though, they are arguing, and this has been an argument that's been made before, that while some see the ICC as a deterrence for breaking international law and national law, especially when it comes to human rights violations, they say that the ICC involvement is often in itself something that harms very fragile systems in place when it comes to peacekeeping operations or peace processes. For instance, a warrant of arrest for a head of state could make them unwilling to negotiate, they say. Your thoughts on this?
Well, we have seen what happened in Sudan, and we have seen what happened in Rwanda. And I believe that this argument they are making is all without basis, without reason, without any concrete evidence to justify their own line of thinking. What we are thinking is that these countries are trying to insulate themselves from justice, insulate themselves from international standards, insulate themselves from making sure that they are held to account. We know what they do. We know how civil society members, journalists, opposition figures are arrested arbitrarily, sometimes detained indefinitely. So we know they know what they are doing, and that is why they are making this futile effort to isolate themselves from the international order. But that will not help them. We believe that the best way to do this is to make sure that they make themselves accountable. And we believe that even though, the International Criminal Court has its own problems, but it's still the best thing we have available to ensure justice and to ensure that we have international mechanism that hold all perpetrators of atrocities to account. And you know that these countries were even have withdrawn from ECOWAS as well. And Niger withdrew from ECOWAS. So it's a pattern. They are gradually withdrawing from this, from that. And whatever they are doing, they are putting their own people more into danger. Because when Niger Republic withdrew from ECOWAS, it is the people of Niger Republic that suffered the impact, not their military leaders. So what they are doing is actually oblivious of the well-being, of justice, of fairness for their own people. Is just an attempt to establish an enclave or a region of military dictatorship within Africa. And we believe that Africa should have gone far ahead of military rule. We have had many years of military coups, military rule, and we thought that in this age, in this century, we have passed that level, and we are now in an era of complete democracy and rule by the people for the people. Unfortunately, they want to create this impression that they are insulating themselves from the international order so that they will not be held to account. But even if they withdrew from ICC, I don't believe that will protect them, because however long it will take, they will still be held to account. We know the atrocities happening in Mali. We know the atrocities happening in Niger Republic. We know what is happening in the conflict in Burkina Faso. And there is need to investigate these conflicts and make sure that perpetrators of human rights violations are brought to justice. And
can I just come in because we are running out of time, and
Yes.
I want to get to this point of, as you say, they can't run away from being held accountable because as AU members, the AU itself has responsibility to take them before the ICC. But I want to look at a key principle of the ICC, that is complementarity. So what should it be doing in the face of this, in particularly in building local capacity to ensure that justice is effected?
Well, these countries actually on their own part should have been doing the right thing, which is that not trying to isolate themselves, number one. And number two, they have the responsibility to make sure that they are transparent, they are open, and they offer themselves openly for scrutiny for whatever issue. Unfortunately, this move they are making will not help them because it will further isolate these countries and make their economic situation worse, and it will isolate them from the rest of the international community and even from ECOWAS and even from the African Union, because Africa should be moving towards internationalism, towards a system that African countries can hold each other to account. But the fact that they are not even talking about ICC, they have already withdrawn even from the regional bloc. And this is not a surprising move because they are trying to establish an enclave of military dictatorship, which is quite unacceptable. And we believe that if they have any concerns, and the concerns are genuine, I know that many other countries have concerns and issues. Even activists have issues with the ICC. They should have tabled their concerns. So they are making this move, I believe, with bad intention. And we believe that this is the right time for the international community to pay more attention to this country, to subject them to more scrutiny, because something bad may be coming. And that was why they are trying to make this move, so that they can insulate themselves, protect themselves, shield themselves from accountability and justice.
Well, we thank you for your time. That is Issa Sanusi, Director at Amnesty International, speaking to us. It is now 21 minutes past 9.
In this episode of Channel Africa Conversations, Peter talks to Dr. Tulisile Buddha, an academic, author, and an expert in indigenous knowledge systems. Join us for a compelling discussion on preserving African languages and traditions in the digital era. Dr. Tulisile unpacks the role of educators, explorers, and how technologies like AI can support cultural preservation, and challenges us to rethink how we honor African heritage. You can find the episode on YouTube, SABC Plus, and on our website, channelafrica.co.za. This episode is a must-listen for educators, creators, and change makers across the continent. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Africa World Hour. Africa World Hour. Unpacking global headlines from an African perspective.
And that's exactly what we're doing on this Friday, as we do Monday to Friday, 2100 hours to 2200 hours Central African time. And this time we look at the Democratic Republic of Congo, where yet another armed group is set to have emerged. But more importantly, we're going to reflect on recent events, and that is President Felix Tshisekedi, who made a visit to Mhlambandlovu in Pretoria, headquarters of the South African presidency, where he met with South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa. And we heard from the presidency of South Africa yesterday that there were a wide range of issues that were going to be covered that included bilateral trade negotiations, but most importantly, peace and security. And of course, this comes as various reports suggest that there is a new militant group, the CPR, operating in the Democratic Republic of Congo. But of course, there are those who argue that it's not a new military group. But we want to talk about President Felix Tshisekedi's own culpability, the balance of bilateral diplomacy, his role in what has happened, particularly with South Africa's deployment of the SANDF and their eventual withdrawal from the DRC. We speak now to author and political analyst Ube Kabasu Babu Katlondi. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us.
Well, thank you very much, and warmest greetings to your viewers and listeners all over Africa.
So as I mentioned, it's important to look at the way forward. President Felix Tshisekedi came to see President Cyril Ramaphosa after rebuffing an invitation from President Thabo Mbeki. We spoke to an analyst who says it was a strategic move. But what next? To what end? I want to understand, is there a conversation behind closed doors where President Cyril Ramaphosa says to President Tshisekedi, this is the role you played for where the DRC is today, and this is what we did to try and help?
First of all, in terms of background, we have to understand the fact that Mr. Tshisekedi is ascending in power around elections in 2018. President Cyril Ramaphosa played a major role. As you know, President Kagame then was president of the AU, and he was kind of resisting the electoral process that had occurred in the Congo. And 11 African presidents had to meet in Addis Ababa to discuss this. And then President Kabila sent his envoys here to convince President Ramaphosa so that he can also persuade his peers in Addis Ababa to accept President Tshisekedi. So President Cyril Ramaphosa played a major role in Mr. Tshisekedi ascending in power. Therefore, I think President Cyril Ramaphosa still has a role to play. And Mr. Tshisekedi came here in terms of trying to secure his support. I'm sure in terms of how the way forward, like from the Washington Doha process, could unfold.
Now, it is President Tshisekedi's decision to invite the United States into the machinations of either attaining peace or the players that ought to be involved in those peace talks. And some observers have said that very move put the SANDF, the South African Defence Force members, in very precarious conditions. In fact, we saw in some cases some SANDF members reported to be held hostage by M23. What are your thoughts on that? His role in that decision and the extent of, the external influence and where it plays regional matters and agreements.
Well, I think there was a problem, I think, with the calculations or assessment made by SADC leaders prior to them conveying the Samir DRC to Goma. Because there were already signs there indicating that there was a sort of a political crisis emerging in the Congo already by 2020, when the former President Kabila's FCC coalition and Mr. Tshisekedi's coalition, CASH, when that coalition collapsed and Prime Minister was removed and speakers were removed. So there were already signs. SADC should have anticipated and intervened to try and calm the situation down. However, I think they were complacent or they didn't pay attention. Now, they sent the troops to Goma without even assessing properly the situation in terms of the military capability of M23, working in conjunction with the Rwandan army. So it created a problem there, a massive challenge regarding South African troops. And as we know, 14 South African soldiers lost their lives there. So it created a situation because Mr. Tshisekedi was expecting SADC to intervene in his favor and to overwhelm M23. So then SADC had to withdraw its troops after that debacle, and Mr. Tshisekedi went to President Trump proposing mineral deals that the U.S. Exploits Congolese minerals in the east, where there's war, where possibility of even exploiting those strategic minerals is very complicated. And so we have now a situation where President Tshisekedi is relying on SADC, relying on President Ramaphosa, but President Ramaphosa and SADC can no longer, obviously, send soldiers back. And President Kabila is still waiting, Tshisekedi waiting for Americans to help him. So we are still in this situation of a quagmire where now Tshisekedi is trying to convince President Ramaphosa to support him in terms of having like a Congolese organized, Congolese run sort of internal dialogue for peace, which AFC M23 and Mr. Kabila are not really ready to accept.
Now, when you talk about M23, I want to talk about symbolic diplomacy against the question that I'm asking. If you're asking me to help you out as a friend, I'm talking about bilateral relations here. At some point, there needs to be an honest assessment of my role as President Tshisekedi and how I have contributed to the rising insurgency in Ituri region, South and North Kivu. And I'm talking about Thomas Lubanga. There are people who've said part of the reason there is a CPR and they continue to be part of what is happening in these volatile regions is because you, President Tshisekedi, brought a man who had been convicted by the international courts for his role in the conflict, and you put him in a very strategic position in the DRC. And when that went awry, he added to the militant activities. Is he cognizant of that? Is he taking account of that, particularly in these peace talks?
Exactly. Mr. Tshisekedi is responsible for a lot of problems and a lot of these contradictions. In fact, the scenario of Thomas Lubanga being convicted when Tshisekedi ascended in power in the DRC found Mr. Lubanga in prison. It is quite the same situation with many people of M23. In fact, when Mr. Tshisekedi ascended in power, not only did he find Lubanga in prison and released him and even enlisted him in a task force with the mission of going to try and bring peace in Ituri, but also when he came in power, he found many soldiers, many officers of M23 in prison and other being actually prosecuted. He stopped the prosecution. He released many of the generals of M23, and many of those generals who had been imprisoned by President Kabila, and we should remember that M23 had been defeated in 2012 under President Kabila. Those officers, the very same officers who were released by President Kabila, President Tshisekedi when he ascended in power, are the ones now who are fighting and who conquered Bukavu and Goma. It is the same scenario of Thomas Lubanga, who was incarcerated under President Kabila in 2015 when he was sent back from The Hague to come and serve the remaining part of his sentence in the Congo. President Tshisekedi released him, put him, the presidency put him in charge. He was part of the task force that had to go in Ituri and bring peace there. Unfortunately, when he went there to Ituri, Mr. Lubanga was abducted by a group, by some militia I think he was abducted and kept hostage for 2 months. Somehow he was released, went to Uganda, and it's from Uganda that he started his new rebel group called the CPR. So Mr. Tshisekedi is responsible to a very significant extent of what is going on in with regard to not only M23, but also with regard to Thomas Lubanga.
All right, we're going to, I'm afraid, have to leave it. There's still lots to discuss in terms of a sustainable peace framework going forward and what President Felix Tshisekedi himself can contribute. But we thank you for your time, your insights. Ube Kabasu Babu Katlondu, who is an author and a political analyst from the DRC, speaking to us about President Tshisekedi's recent visit.
Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mukwenata@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African perspective. 1 hour, one continent, one voice. Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
And now at just about 24 minutes to 10, we go abroad now to talk about regional international relations between the United States, but this time with South Africa. As we've seen, it's been pretty much the thorn in the side of US President Donald Trump in terms of the countries that he's unhappy with. And that relationship, it seems that it's once again under scrutiny. The second time this year, American lawmakers have introduced a bill that could significantly alter relations with Pretoria. On September 15th, U.S. Senator John Kennedy tabled this U.S.-South Africa Bilateral Relations Review Act in the Senate. This proposed legislation follows a similar bill introduced earlier in the year by Congressman Ronnie Jackson, and shares a common objective. And what is that? Both bills call for Washington to re-evaluate its ties with South Africa, impose sanctions on the ruling ANC, or once ruling ANC, and even terminate South Africa's participation in the African Growth and Opportunity Act that is AGOA. We're joined now by Abdullahi Boru Haleke, who is a U.S. Africa International Relations expert who is based in Washington, D.C. A very good evening to you, Abdullahi, and thank you so much for speaking to us. So just up the way from you, a walk away from, I'd imagine, where you are stationed, these decisions are being made about South Africa on the basis of what has repeatedly been said, including by white South Africans, of misinformation. What do you think it will achieve? Is it about putting more pressure on South Africa? What will this second bill seek to achieve?
I think let's step back a little bit and examine the South Africa-United States relations through the lens of history. A lot of the time, because of post-apartheid mindset or the latest history that we have, we tend to consider that the United States and South Africa's relationship was always good. You know, apartheid wouldn't have thrived without the implicit and explicit support of the United States. They gave them the political cover. They used every available lever that they had to continue supporting apartheid. I think it would be fair to suggest that minus the United States support, apartheid wouldn't have lasted that much. The same people, this just shows that the South Africa-United States relations has come full circle. The same people who sanctioned and put ANC on the terrorist list are the same people who are again saying we need to sanction ANC. That is after they Disneyfied Mandela, made and turned the man almost into a saint. He is a great man, but not a saint, because they were overcompensating for what they did. Now, in the shape of Donald Trump, that relationship has come full circle. A couple of things before I hand it back over to you, my sister. One is the question around Israel-Gaza. South Africa, because of its unique history, took a fairly balanced, rational position about what is going on in Gaza. They took the case to International Court of Justice. The United States was not happy at all. Second, the United States was not happy when South Africa said, we will work with Russia. And this has got an old Cold War relations. If in the past, The ANC was sanctioned because allegedly the National Party was the vanguard against the communism that was spreading. This time round, there is no ideological or philosophical grounding of why South Africa is being singled out, other than the fact that South Africa is pursuing a fairly independent foreign policy.
And I want to then zero in on that, the ideological far-right policies that we are seeing by not only the MAGA administration, but how far off in Congress is it getting support? Because I want to understand, is it driven by security concerns as well, or is it more partisan politics?
It is purely partisan politics because, the PayPal gang that were predominantly South African, Peter Sachs, as well as Peter Thiel, who spent some time in Namibia under apartheid, as well as other South Africans, including Elon Musk, have fanned this flame of white South African genocide, and as such, one of the first executive order that the President of the United States issued was to do away with the refugee management authority here. And subsequent to that, he issued another executive order whose primary function was to save white South Africans from alleged alleged white genocide. So it's purely partisan, and South Africans, particularly the African outfits and pressure groups, played a great deal of coming out to the United States, hanging out with the MAGA crowd, going on Fox News, and saying that, we South Africans are being, killed by a black majority government. Some of the photos that the president showed in his attempt at humiliating South African President Cyril Ramaphosa when he visited White House were not from South Africa. They were from the Democratic Republic of Congo. But within the larger MAGA universe, they are allergic to truth. To them, anything but truth. So they are operating in a fact-free zone. No amount of South Africa saying there's crime, but it's not predominantly targeting white people. Short of capitulation, short of coming in with bended knees and kissing the ring, nothing will change.
Now let's talk about this, the facts then, Abdullahi, because if they're saying they want to remove South Africa from AGOA, what will be the impact? Will it be, at a macro level for South Africa, or could it be also localized shocks for local industry in the US? And we understand from Kennedy that it's because of Pretoria's ties to Russia and China for supporting Palestine as well. Could this be an operation that backfires in the sense that South Africa already has ties with Russia and China, and could it push them more towards that, even though US President Donald Trump has spoken about further punitive measures against those who are part of and who support the BRICS agenda?
It will have an impact on South Africa. It will have some impact here in the United States, because if you look at the trade numbers, it is, I think, almost 27 billion between South Africa and United States. But if you look at the other side, it is almost double that, if not. It's slightly under double what South Africa trade volume with China. And so in many ways, I think this, whereas there would be a short-term pain, let's not run away from it. South Africa, like many other African countries, and probably even the world, they cannot, they will deal with them in the short term. The shock would be fairly sharp, but in the medium and long term, diversifying from United States is not the end of the world, because as it is now, this order that the United States has been the captain since the end of Second World War, it is creaking under the weight of its own contradictions. This order, the global order of trade, finance, banking, human rights, and good governance, allegedly was built on mutual trust, was built on international trade, and including if there are trade disputes, we have World Trade Organization that can resolve some of those. But this unilateral cowboy approach that is purely punitive, and its function is cruelty in the end, is not going to work. Even if South Africa capitulate and says we will move away from this South African case in Gaza against Israel, we will sever our ties with Russia, we will chase the Beijing ambassador in South Africa, it will change nothing, because the moment you appease a bully, it will set a cascade of downward slide that is not going to be useful to anybody. But South Africa needs to stay pursuing its independent foreign policy in a principled fashion. But there will be pain, but it will be temporary.
Thank you so much, Abdullahi. Much appreciated for your time and your insights. Abdullahi Boru Haleki, who is an Africa U.S. international expert, speaking to us from Washington, D.C.
1 hour, one continent, one voice. Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Right now, Friday was the second day of the African Biotrade Festival taking place at the Sandton Convention Centre in Johannesburg, South Africa's Gauteng province. The festival is also hosting the Joburg leg of the 2025 Organic and Natural Products Expo Africa. Now, the 3-day festival ends on Saturday. Tuto Ngobeni attended the festival and had this to say.
The Joburg leg of the Organic and Natural Products Expo Africa is part of the second edition of the African Biotrade Festival taking place at the Sandton Convention Centre in Johannesburg in South Africa's Gauteng province. The 3-day festival is organized and hosted by Bioproducts Advancement Network of South Africa, which is a coordination network established to address key challenges within the bioprospecting and biotrade sector. The Organic and Natural Products Expo Africa is the continent's leading platform for health, sustainability, and natural living, which has brought together innovative brands, trade buyers, distributors, and conscious consumers under one roof. Other African countries represented at the expo include Uganda, Lesotho, and Botswana, among others. Risto Ashko from Risto Trading, Namibian oil producer, says he hopes to attract more clients.
Risto Trading is a company which is manufacture cooking oil made from some seeds from Namibia, which we can only find in Namibia and some part of South Africa and Botswana. This oil is not our innovation. It was innovation which was brought up by our parents back then, but it was about to die off. But it is now time we can revive it, and we are here to showcase what is Namibia all about. And we hope to get more clients who are interested, because this oil is more like olive oil. The nutrition which you can find in this oil is similar to what you find in olive oil.
Voisman Mangana is from Botswana, and he sells products that treat various health problems.
They are indigenous herbs from Botswana. So I was talking about Bodaf's multi-infection herb to help with arthritis, people who have arthritis. It helps them. Then we have the Tavik herb. Usually Tavik is for sore throat, some infection wounds. It can help you to recover very well.
South African Nombusam Nisi from the Radiant Retreat, an organic candle maker who just recently started her business, says she's at the expo to test the market.
Well, I came to test the market. I started 2 months ago to make organic candles. So I'm just here to see how the market responds and what it is that they want so that I can also get direction as to what to make more of. Actually, it's my first time at an expo. So I'm surprised that people actually go to expos. Like, I didn't think it was something people actually do. So now I'm surprised by the traffic and people, so no.
Meanwhile, Esther Boate from Ghana's Food Authority is also exhibiting at the expo and says they hope to get businesses that want to import products into Ghana.
We are here to talk to businesses who wants to export their products to Ghana for businesses. So we have the requirements that you need to follow before you be able to submit or bring your product to Ghana.
For Channel Africa News, I am Tutongo Bene in Johannesburg.
And it's time now for our 2140 feature, a little bit later than usual, but it is exciting nonetheless. And this evening, we bring you what is happening in Saturday on... Let's try that again. We bring you what is going to be happening in Newtown tomorrow, this Saturday. It is going to be at the Market Theatre Precinct. It'll come alive for a once-in-a-lifetime celebration. 100 jazz musicians, veterans, rising stars will gather for a great day in Newtown. A photo shoot and, of course, a jam session honoring the centenary of the great Tsepiso Makwetla. And joining us now is a man behind the lens, internationally acclaimed photographer, Tsepiso Makwetla. A very good evening to you, Tsepiso. Thank you so much for joining us. It is indeed an honor.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
So, Tsepiso, I'm just curious. You photographed some very powerful moments in our cultural history. What inspired you to bring jazz musicians together in this way? You've done it before, but particularly for Tsepiso Centenary.
Well, I suppose all of us have a duty to perform as artists of South Africa, and also to maintain our heritage and culture, and maintain our legacies, legacies of our legends that have passed on, that are still alive today. We gain courage from them and the work that they've done in the past. So for me, I'm only a vessel that is carrying on the baton that was started by my predecessors, So I came about the idea after I won my award at Prague in Czech Republic as a jazz photographer. So, your horizons sort of opens up when you meet people out of your bracket, out of your space, the ideas flow, and you also share yours, And then I got to read, and I saw the documentary by Art Kane, who in 1958 brought together about 57 artists of that era in Harlem. There happened to be your Coltrane's, Dizzy, Sonny Rollins, all of those. And he had that image, which is still today, people still talk about it, and it's still been celebrated. A lot of articles have been written about it, documentaries and all of that. So I felt fitting for me that I come also from the culture of jazz that is so loved in South Africa. And it's opened up now globally to the world to see what we do. And I felt maybe I should showcase the artists that we have in South Africa, collectively, all generations, the young ones all the way up to the older, Abigail Kubegas of this world, which are people that still around and helping us to carry on the legacy that they have. So the idea came about that from Art Kane to put together that image. So I'm doing the same also in celebrating our legend, Ntate Tsepiso Makwetla, along with others that also it's a centenary, Tsepiso Ntemi, So I thought tomorrow we'll do that, and then we'll have that photo shoot, and then we will also have an exhibition. The exhibition that I'm putting together is musicians that have passed on, that come from that same era, Few of them are still alive today, but mostly it's people that played then, Bumire Makeba, Hugh Masekela, Jonas Gwangwas of this world, Pilison Temis, all of those. So the exhibition is there also at Market Theatre. So we'll have 3 sort of items happening tomorrow. So I'm hoping that people will appreciate it. It's been a lot of work putting it together.
So for those who hadn't planned on coming, but I'd imagine you'd also want to entice them to come and join you, translate to them your vision, what your visualization of, from Harlem to Newtown, how you're bringing that Sophia Town energy through, that jam session, through photography. And I'd imagine other things such as conversations around the legacy of jazz in South Africa and its people.
Yes. So we'll transform the whole of the Market Theatre precinct, starting from where Kip is when it's named after the same person that we're celebrating today. In that whole space, we'll have some vintage cars of that era. We'll have one of the kids stars, Matt Joe, who's a tap dancer, who used to also be popular around those days. So he'll be around entertaining people, but in that style of back then. So the whole atmosphere will be transformed into the 50s, the 60s, Sophia Town mood. People will be dressed in those attires, vintage cars around, musicians around, beautiful exhibition, music also being performed of the repertoire that was going to be put together by Kaya Mahlangu, of that music being played by musicians of all generations. It's just a spectacular event that we hardly ever see in South Africa, and it's the first time that we put this together. I happen to be very fortunate to work with someone who's also shared the dreams and ideas that I have, which is Sister Nothemba Madumo. With the 2 of us on this thing. So we managed to really put together something that has never been seen before in this country. And I'm hoping that musicians that are going to be part of this image, their legacies will be told many, many years to come. Probably that image will outlive all of us. But this is what we are creating tomorrow. It's just once in every 100 years, I guess.
And it's a beautiful imagery, because I'm thinking of roots, I'm thinking of branches. And of course, if we speak about the baobab tree in African tradition and heritage, that's what I see. And that's what you are planting, that seed, because you're saying the proceeds of the merchandise will go to the Johnny Mekwa School of Music.
Correct.
And tell me then how, because a lot of the young ones don't realize that era of music also carried with it a lot of knowledge that was passed down from generation to generation about politics, about economics, about life, etc., etc.
Yes, it does indeed. I mean, the way they lived, I mean, the politics of this country was transformed by the artists. We had the shows that were touring the world, King Kong of this world, Sarafina, all of those people did a lot to just give put South Africa in that platform where we were celebrating it. But we don't want to really neglect things that have been done by the guys that were ahead of us. So we're taking that responsibility now and putting that back into it. I mean, the musicians that we have today, they know that they're good, they know that they're doing the work, but we also have to help them. I'm not a musician myself, but I'm in love with music, and I dedicated my life to capturing and archiving jazz. So this is just my contribution to say I'm helping you and to carry on your legacy so that your kids will also know what you were doing. In that image that we're creating tomorrow, lots of stories are going to come. There's going to be conversations amongst the musicians that have not met in a while. Maybe some of them will come up with collaborations. Maybe some of them will be sharing certain ideas. After tomorrow, we'll probably see other things that will be developing out of that meeting that you're going to have tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to it.
And I'd just like to hear from you, Spiwe, as we round up music and memory in terms of, or should I say sound and memory are intertwined, and we're hearing different sounds coming up from young people now. And I've been meeting quite a few of them or interviewing quite a few of them recently, and it really is amazing how they're interpreting the space that they're living in now while also reflecting what they've learned from their forebears. How are you going to bring this to life tomorrow? As you say, it's a multi-generational event.
Mm-hmm. You see, the idea, because what I've done is that I've been capturing jazz myself for the past 40 odd years that I've been documenting jazz. Now, for me to bring back all those images that I've shot, your Begim Selekus of this world, Moses Taiwa Molalekwa, all of those, just to bring it in front of them, to just reflect and then see how far we come and what can they do better now. We might not have resources back then, but the music's still the same. Music is beautiful. And also artists that are also pushing us now. I mean, we have guys that have gone global, you know, your Ntutuzo Makatinis of this world, you know, Linda's Kakanis that also signed up with Blue Note, are doing the same job we are doing today. But I could say in a way that we use all hands on deck, because everybody has to take the part in doing what South Africa needs most, to uplift our arts and culture and our heritage through what we know best, which is music. And we've inherited a very good taste of music, so we can't really fault our predecessors in that regard.
And thank you so much for speaking to us. All the best for your event, and I'd encourage everybody who is passing by the Market Theatre precinct tomorrow to go, if you're thinking about it, to just experience, as we mentioned, the centenary celebration of Kipi Mweketse and the music. PM Klambi hosting that event. And as I was speaking about these new artists who have really done a brilliant interpretation of sound, Siama Kuzeni, Tandin Tuli, those are the artists that we recently have hosted these past 2 Fridays. So the reimagining of jazz and sound. So it brings us to a minute to 10. Let's see what is coming up on African Diaries this evening. Shayla and Dukumana is in the studio. How are you?
I'm burning. How are you?
Yeah, hot, babe.
Listen, all types. So today is very musical, sticking to the theme of things. We've got Kondwani Nyamasauka, who sort of schools us on love music across the continent. Now, there's this theory that we don't know, understand, appreciate love music, that we're all for the hype. If not, we're all for culture and tradition, but maybe it's embedded in our context. Maybe the reality is that we don't tell our love stories like the Western world does. And so we're going to be appreciating that. And then in the second hour, I have a treat for people. Listen, if you're into fashion, if you think that fashion is for the extremely, extremely girly girl, like she has to have her nails did, she has to have all kinds of makeup on, you're in for a surprise. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, look who you're sitting across.
I'm
very inconsistent. I'm just like, what? You know, if I feel like I want to put on some powder, that's me. It's such an interesting thing, because I was talking to a friend earlier on about a certain gentleman I was speaking to recently. He said, everybody needs to have work done on them, and they need to. I was thinking to myself, really? I don't know.
Work done on them?
Yes.
What kind of work?
Well, just like nip tucks, jabs, and I'm just the kind of person, and we all want to show up as good. And maybe that's something you and I could talk about at another time, is what makes you feel like you look good?
Absolutely.
Is it do you only ever feel good if all of those things are good?
I don't think so. I think it's an intrinsic thing. What you believe makes you look good is based on what has fashioned your understanding of what good looks like. Right, so that's like an upbringing thing. And so if good is no makeup, hair tied, when you tie your hair, you'll feel good, you'll look good, and you'll exude that energy is what I think.
But is it also a generational thing? Gen Z, Gen X, Millennial?
Tsepiso. Let's
leave it here for the Friday. Have a good one. That's it for Africa World Hour. It's goodbye for now.